Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maria and I like to make technology videos on the internet. And today I thought I would sit down and just talk about all the mistakes that I made as a junior software engineer. I think right now I'm more mid-level and I'm going towards senior engineer. So I want to talk to people who are still junior engineers or who might still be making these mistakes. Sometimes I still make these mistakes. Half of these are going to be more like technical towards being a software engineer and the other half are going to be non-technical and could be like related to any sort of field, I would say. Let's talk about all the mistakes that I made. Number one, not making small incremental changes. Having huge commits, having huge PRs. I know someone who, as a junior engineer, was making one huge PR every month and their manager did not like that. So you do not want to be told by your manager to do this. You want to have this ingrained in you. You do this small change, you write a commit, you push it to GitHub. You will make a PR when it's only a few hundred lines change. You don't want to send someone, even like 700 lines is a lot. You basically want to reduce the friction of getting reviews, because that way you're going to learn a lot more, you're going to progress faster. If you're making smaller changes, then someone on your team is going to review it very quickly. You have handheld them. You've also written a good PR description, added comments to different areas, so you make it easy for someone to approve your PR the first time, and that will make you learn faster, be much faster at producing more and more code. As a junior engineer, the whole goal is to produce as much code as possible, and then once you become more and more senior, it's like more about leadership skills. Also, very important point, I want you to be reviewing your own PRs before you're sending them out for someone else to be reviewing them. So that's a mistake that I used to make a lot, because I would be super embarrassed when I would have something commented out or like a to-do statement that I would forget to do, and then someone would write, "Nit, you need to do this," or "remove this comment," and it just looks bad on you that you're not reviewing your own code before sending it to someone. It's like when you're writing an essay for school, you don't just write the essay once and then just send it out. You review it and make sure that it's good before you give it to your teacher, right? So you want to do the same thing. And this will also help you improve reviewing other people's code. Okay, a little bit similar to the previous point is that I want you to always do a tech spike. So what that means, before you start coding in whatever project or task you have, you actually do some investigation. Go into the code, or you ask someone who you know knows this code base to save you time. How would I do this thing? Which files do I need to change? You have to look through this and see all the changes you need to make. So basically with this, you want to resolve any ambiguity that you might have. Like, oh, I don't know how long this will take. So you want to actually look into that. You also want to write any SQL queries to see how big is the data that you're going to be using, how much latency will this increase in API, do you need to add any tasks to improve that? Because the mistakes that I was making, like for my first projects, was that I would write Jira tickets, do the front end, and I would put 1 week, just an estimate, very, very vague. Whereas if you do this, you can then break down that task into like maybe 6 different tasks. Write this React component that does this, write this other component, write the unit test for this component, write the styling for this, split it into smaller chunks, and then you can more easily estimate those. Like, okay, I think this will take me 2 days, but also it probably won't take you 2 days, because a lot of the time something will come up. Either your manager is like, oh, I need you to do this other thing. Some requirements might change, or you find something that you didn't find in your investigation and you need to add some buffer room. So always add like a day, a few days, and in general, the project should be like maybe a week over how much you think it will be. You don't want it to be like, I said I would be done the project on the 20th of January, and then your manager already scheduled you for another project, but you're still not done this one. Then it looks bad on both of you. So try to estimate things before you start coding. And also, like I said, you can ask someone else for help. Like I remember this one guy on my team was an expert on this one service that we had, and he just had one project in that service, so he knew the most about it. So when people outside of the team would ask about this service, we would always point to him, so then he would answer them. And this one guy from a different team came in, talked to this guy for 30 minutes, and then he was off on his way and he could work on this project. You have to find out who knows what in your team, in your company, and this will also help you with tech spiking. Number 3, learn how to efficiently test and run your code at work. One time, my friend saw my terminal and she said, "Maria, why is your terminal so ugly?" So after that traumatic experience, I was like, okay, I need to fix my terminal setup. So I downloaded iTerm 2, I made it look all pretty, I added my ZSH, so it has all like the GitHub commands that are really short form, autocomplete. So there are many ways that you can customize your terminal. I also recommend knowing what aliases you have set up and setting up many more, because at my new job I found that I was copying and pasting a bunch of commands multiple times a day. So then I set it up so that I have all those commands as different aliases, and then I'll remember, okay, BA does this, BT does that. So you want your whole setup, your like dev environment, to run as smooth as butter. Also, when testing code, I want you to learn how to use your IDE debuggers. Do not put print statements unless you're doing JavaScript, because you have to still. In all the backend coding languages, you can add debuggers into like VS Code or any like JetBrains product. I had procrastinated learning those, but those are very useful and you need to learn them. It's kind of like flossing your teeth. Nobody really wants to do it, but you should do it. Oh, and also something relevant to joining a new company or a new team is that you should learn how to test different things in different environments, or like when or how you can test things. So at my company, we have like, you can make a dev sandbox and you can test things there. Then you can do staging environments, because you do not want to test in prod, right? Unless it's like the end of the project and you have a feature flag to block that from being seen from other people. But learn the different ways for testing, because that will help you speed up your development process. Because a lot of the times in my first job, like when I was a junior engineer, I hated using the dev environments there and it kept breaking. So then I would just test in staging, which takes longer. So I wish I didn't do that, and I wish I had actually learned how to use the dev environments. Number 4 is kind of controversial, or maybe it's controversial. Don't refactor any code. This is a mistake that I've seen a lot of people make as junior engineers, because you're like, how can I improve the code base? Well, let me just rewrite all of it. That's not good, because that is a waste of time. That's not a company priority probably, and you're not going to get recognized. I've seen that in multiple cases. People will spend their weekends, their evenings rewriting all this code, and then they'll be like, hey Maria, can you review these thousands of lines of changes? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a lot. I don't know, like, why are we doing this? In theory, any code that you are pushing, that any code that gets into the main branch, that's already old code. So unless there is a company priority or a need to refactor the code, then you should not be doing that. In my case right now at my company, it's a little bit different. Before I had joined, they were testing out different ways to do things, different tools. So maybe in the code base, we have like 3 ways of doing something, like the same thing. And now, because they tried out these 3 ways, they're like, okay, we like this one the most. Let's deprecate the usage of those other 2. So in that case, you can refactor code. Usually it's more like in a startup, right? Like in a big tech company, you're probably not going to be refactoring code because those services are humongous. It's usually like multiple years of effort to actually refactor something, and the company has to make it a priority for you to actually be recognized for your work. I'm just saying that it's a waste of time. Don't try to do that. Find other ways to make an impact, because that is like very low-hanging fruit. Okay, now we're going to go into the non-technical mistakes that I made. So number 5 is to dwell on something for way too long before asking for help. I was trying to be autonomous right away, and that was not helpful, because then I'm just wasting my time not knowing what to do when I could have just asked the senior engineer after like an hour or 2 of being stuck on something. And that will save you a lot of time, a lot of pain and frustration. I also didn't have AI at the time when I was a junior engineer. Now I have it. Actually, AI is very useful, because then you can ask a lot of your stupid questions to ChatGPT or Claude or whichever one you like. But there's nothing that knows your entire code base like a senior engineer, so you should ask them. Okay, number 6, also kind of controversial. And I talked about this with my friend who also experienced this. But a few times when I was a junior engineer, I didn't own my own work. So I would get a project, I would do it, and then I would just be like, okay, it's done. And then somebody else would swoop in and take credit for my work. Why does that happen? Well, if it's a good thing that you did, someone's gonna want to take credit for it. And if you're not taking credit for it initially and being like, hey, here are my updates every week or every day, here's a demo of what I've done so far, here's like the results of the bug bash. If you're not doing that, someone else is going to swoop in and be like, yeah, this is my work. I did that. And the only way to prevent this is to start immediately owning your own work. So you also need to work kind of on your brand. And I know they do this at Meta, but I think it's relevant at other companies, because at Meta they have their own like internal Facebook where they're making posts about their work. So they're taking credit for the things that they do. Usually that's more useful when it's like close to performance reviews or you want to get promoted. This is very useful even in like small things. You want to be like, hey, I helped this person. I did that. I did that. Even one person on my old team used to message our manager every day and say all the things that he did that day, including who did he help. Like, oh, Maria messaged me with this question and I helped. So you need to own your work and be like, hey, I did this. Because also another person on my team would get asked questions by someone else, and then that person would then take credit for the things that this person said. So if you're not owning what you're saying, what you're helping people with, people are going to be greedy and steal your work. So imagine that I'm walking down the street and $100 bills falls out of my wallet. Someone can just pick it up and be like, okay, this is mine now, because it doesn't have my name on it or anything. I can't be like, hey, that's my money. But if it was my credit card that fell, that has my name on it, I can be like, hey, that's mine. So you want to always make sure that you're putting your name on any documents you're writing. Obviously, you have your name on Git commits, a bunch of things like writing in Slack threads. So just make sure that your work is being credited towards you. Number 7 is something that you might have heard of. Keeping a brag document or like stuff I did at work document. That's really useful, especially if you have a very short-term memory like I do. It's very helpful to be like, I did that last week. Really, really useful when you're doing those biannual performance reviews, because then you can look back, like, what did I do in the past 6 months? And then you have already links to pull requests, things you helped people with. So like put screenshots of any nice messages you got from someone. You can add to it like every day or every week, something like that. So you keep track of what you were working on. Number 8 is to not stay in your comfort zone. I would say that if you're a junior engineer, every single project that you're working on should build on top of each other and become harder and harder, and also have at least one new thing that you're learning. So I was lucky where every project I had, I was doing something new. If I wasn't doing something new, I would tell my manager I would prefer to work on this other project. The way I knew what projects were happening was that I would have meetings with my manager and ask them, what are the next projects for like the next quarter or the next few weeks? What are we working on? The interesting ones, I would be like, hey, I'm interested in that one. Or if it seems like it's a really big project and it's too hard for a junior engineer to do, then maybe they'll put a senior engineer and then you can work with them so they can teach you, which is super useful because my first manager as a junior engineer, he liked to throw junior engineers into the deep end and put them on their own projects, which was very, very hard because I didn't know like what does a good project look like? How do you run a project? I think it's useful to work under a few different senior engineers so you can learn their style of running a project so that you can take bits and pieces that you like and put them into your own engineering avatar or something. And also, after a few months of working at this company, learning the product that you're working on, you should start writing your own projects. Think of different things that you can do. Send those ideas to a project manager or talk to your manager about them. You can write project specs, and I was able to do this for a few different projects where I worked on a few of them and then I passed on one of them and someone else on my team worked on it and I was able to mentor them. And number 9, this is something that I'm going to have to work on in my new company, but it's becoming a subject matter expert or SME. You want to be that person where it's like someone comes into your team Slack channel and they're like, how do I do this? How does this service work? And everybody points to you and pings you and is like, hey, help this person. Like that one guy on my team was the expert for this service that none of us cared to learn. Or someone on your team might be the expert for infrastructure or for databases or for front end or for mobile. Okay, number 10 is something that I wish someone had told me earlier on because I definitely stayed at my old job for too long. It's don't waste your time with a manager who does not align with you and will not stick their neck out for you. If your manager and you do not get along for whatever reason and they are not willing to fight for you to get a promotion, even when you deserve it, you should not be there. You need to make the decision to leave that team or leave that company. It is a waste of your energy to work with someone like that who's not picking you up. Like if they are putting you down actively, if you have to like go to HR about them, that's a bad sign. That's a toxic work environment. So you need to get out of there. I wasted time being there when I could have been on another manager's team, gotten promoted, or been at a different company and gotten promoted. Once I was actually interviewing, everybody was like, oh yeah, you're mid-level. And I'm like, yeah, I wish my company saw that in me because I see that in me All these other companies see that in me, but clearly something's wrong. Okay, Dimples is drinking water, so she's loud. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!